Hello and welcome to our series of Policy Bees to Ashland candidate interviews for the May 17, 2016 election. For this interview, I am being joined by Mary Mortensen, who is running for Board of Health. She is an incumbent, and first off, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Just to get started, for those of you who might not be familiar with you, we know that you're running for Board of Health. We know that you're an incumbent. Why have you chosen to run for re-election?
I first got on the Board of Health back in the late 80s, early 90s, and we started with flu clinics and the LEPC on Nyanza and that type of thing. And I'd like to continue with the flu clinics and making them as free and easy as possible for the residents of the town. Joining the Board of Health has also given me the opportunity to do a lot of other things, and some of them being the cigarettes to children under 21, the tobacco law that we passed. Also the insecticides for the town fields so that our kids aren't being exposed to toxins.
What's that issue about, for those who aren't familiar?
The insecticides, we were trying to come up with a standard so that all town fields were treated the same way with the same insecticides for the bees and whatnot. And we did that, I believe, 2 years ago. We finally got that finalized. And it's just for the safety of the kids.
So these standards would basically dictate the levels of toxicity, or?
Well, it dictates the products that will be used both by the school and by like the Little League fields. You know, anything that is used by the town or is town owned would have the correct insecticides used.
So you set the criteria
Yes.
for those products and what
Yes.
can and cannot be used in fields that that youth and other people, well, townspeople in general will use. Okay.
Right.
Please go ahead.
No, that's the biggest things that we've done. We'll still continue to work on Nyanza and the House Street the House Street dump, and trying to get that underway.
For those folks who aren't familiar with that issue, could you talk a little bit about that?
The House Street dump was originally the town dump, and was used by Nyanza and all the companies in town. There was some hazardous waste there. It's been capped for several years, and they are continuing to monitor the vents that are there for toxic releases. And the only thing that really can be used for is something that is not having people on it. We don't want anybody to be exposed should there ever be anything from it. Not that there's high levels of anything, but we don't want anybody exposed to a possibility.
Right, because it is capped now.
It is capped now, and it's been reshaped a few years ago, and they're hoping now to put the solar panels on there. That was passed, and that'll be a solar farm which will benefit the town.
What other issues on the Board of Health have you worked on, or that you see coming up in the future that you feel that you could bring some clarity to?
Well, we're just in the process of hiring a new town nurse who will be setting up some projects, hopefully with the seniors at the senior center, working with some of the school nurses, as well as with the Board of Health to bring a lot of things coming up. The amount of drugs that are used in town, that type of thing. One of the things that we did was we set up a SHARPS program.
Okay.
And the SHARPS program is dispensing the little red SHARPS boxes. They're in all the pharmacies, they're at the police station, and they're free.
Okay.
We got a BAA grant from the selectmen, and we purchased those, and we are supplying them to the town free.
For those who are not familiar with SHARPS, SHARPS are needles, or used needles,
Yeah,
correct?
anyone that has...
Use medical...
Right.
Yep.
You're diabetics.
Yeah.
For years, they were allowed to put them in a milk bottle and throw them in the trash. That can no longer happen.
Really?
Yes. And what was happening was these boxes, if you go into the pharmacies to buy them, you're paying anywhere from $7 to $10 per box.
That adds up.
It does add up.
Yeah.
So as a town, through the BAA grant, we bought them and we're giving them away. The pharmacies have all gone along with us, and they are, dispensing them if someone comes in and asks, and also with the police station. They can then be brought back when they're full to either the senior center or the police station for disposal.
And that's it?
That's it. There's no charge.
Okay.
And that was worked out through our trash hauler.
Okay. Trash conflict. So, what other issues, or rather, whether issues or projects do you see yourself involved in coming up in the future if you were to be reelected?
You can never tell what's going to come through the door.
Okay.
You know, I mean, you just don't know. We're still working on the tobacco compliance.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because people may not be familiar with some of the work that the town has done on that.
Okay. We were able to finally get it passed so that the age to buy tobacco now in Ashland is 21. We were one of the early towns to do that,
Right.
Needham being the first. And now some of the other towns have caught up with us. I believe Natick just went to it recently, and Framingham should be going very soon. So that it'll make it safer for all the towns around.
And Ashland's really ahead of the curve because
They are.
I mean, if you take a look nationally, there's a national push for states to adopt that.
Absolutely.
That as well. And I think I just saw that Jerry Brown in California just signed something making the tobacco purchase age 21 in California effective in June, I think June 9th or something like that. And I know that there may be some pending legislation on Beacon Hill around that as well. To
They've been
standardize that around
talking
the
about it
Commonwealth.
for a while.
Yeah.
We also have a compliance officer who goes around and does compliance checks. He has a young man that goes with him who is under 21, and they go into every licensed dealer in the town and test to see if they can buy cigarettes without identification.
Oh, I see. I see.
And it's amazing because the last few checks, there's been at least 2 that have been caught.
Wow. Wow.
And it's because the help just doesn't take the time, or they're rushed, and
Sure.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any kind of conspiracy.
But the fees are now much higher. I don't remember offhand. I think it's $300.
Oh, wow.
You know, if you were caught
caught.
selling. So, you know, it's expensive.
No, it's a serious public health issue.
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, it's even though it's tough to take a few minutes to check ID, you have to check ID just to keep the kids safe. You know, and make sure that the law is being followed.
And it's amazing. I've driven down East Union Street when the kids are getting out of school, and it's surprising how many of the kids will get out onto East Union Street and light up a cigarette.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Although,
it's like, where are they getting them?
not in Ashland, hopefully, but and that's amazing though, because I think I read somewhere that nationally cigarette use for young people has actually been falling off. But I mean, anecdotally, if you just kind of take a look around, you still see kids smoking. And
Absolutely.
And it's
But you don't know if it's the parents that are buying them, or if it's an older, you know, peer, or you know, a relative. You just don't know.
You just don't know.
But you know, the idea is to make it as hard for them to get them as possible.
What are some of the other functions of the Board of Health that folks may not be aware of?
The board does a lot of things. They do, you know, like septic systems. If for some reason your septic system is failing, you need to come before the board to get a permit to alter or replace or improve, because there are still a lot of homes that are on septic, not sewer. That's a biggie. We do a lot of restaurant inspections to make sure that they're in compliance. We do a lot with the grease traps for the restaurants, either being inside the kitchen or outside, just to make sure that that grease isn't going into our sewer and causing a plug.
Right.
You know, those type of things. There's a lot involved in it.
It seems like there's a lot of enforcement, but there's also an education piece as well. So it's.
And Mark, our health agent, he's been here, I think, 32 years. And Mark is just a fountain of information. If you have a question, you call him and he has the correct answer for you. And he's more than willing to spend time with you and teach you as we go along. You know, the difference in the septic systems and what you're looking at with the plan and that type of thing. So he's been, you know, a real bounty of knowledge for us.
Well, as we're coming up to our last few minutes, I wanted to ask you a question that I will be asking all of our candidates. Why should we be voting for you for re-election?
I think if you look at the accomplishments that I've had since I've been on the board since the late 80s, early 90s. There's been a lot of things, just the flu clinics that were set up and were free. They were done with volunteer nurse friends of mine originally. You know, the cigarettes, the insecticide, all those kind of little projects. And we continue to work on them.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mary, do you have anything else to add? Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience as they're making their decision for the election on May 17th?
No, just come out and vote. It's your right, you need to use it.
Mary Mortensen, thank you so much for joining us. Mary Mortensen is running for the Board of Health. She's an incumbent. And we just had a conversation about some of the enforcement and the educational activities that the Board of Health conducts. Mary, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
We'd love to hear from you here at Policy Beast, and there are a lot of ways to get in touch with us. You can follow us on Twitter at PolicyBeastTV. We have a Facebook fan page. Look us up on Facebook. You can also email us at policybeasttv@gmail.com. So many ways to get in touch, and we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear about any kind of show ideas or any kind of topics that you'd like us to dive deep into.